Today, we're going to be taking a look at this, the T3A variable temperature soldering station from a company I believe you pronounce as Axiun. It is a fully featured variable temperature soldering station that comes with a 245 style handset and is compatible with the JBC 245 cartridges. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why do I need a variable temperature soldering station? My current soldering iron is doing absolutely fine. And really, this comes down to what you intend to be doing and how much chopping and changing you're doing, not only with the temperatures, but the soldering iron tips as well. A good soldering station can make your life so much easier on the bench, especially if you're wanting to change the tips fast and have the ability to vary the temperature depending on the kind of components you're soldering. Today, what we're going to do is take a closer look at this station itself. I'm going to walk you through what you get with it, some of its features and capabilities. We're going to do some tests on it to make sure it is actually safe to use before even plugging it in. And then at the end, I'm going to give you my thoughts, because this station costs about £100 or $100, depending on what model you get. And it is good value for money compared to some of the high-end ones and has many of the features and capabilities. I also ordered this with the additional stand, which I've got here, which is a better stand, more like you see on higher end models, and we're going to be showing that too. And hopefully by the end of the video you might have an idea on if this soldering station is for you. Now, there are a lot of cheaper options on the market, such as the TS80 or TS100 soldering iron, which allows you to use it off a DC jack or a LiPo or USB. But this is really for someone who wants to take their soldering to the next level on the bench. And again, we'll walk through that as we go through. Now, just before I jump into it, I just want to say, if you find this video interesting, please do consider hitting the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the little bell next to it as well. If you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content like this, because we bought this with my own money, please do check out my Patreon, and there's also a link to buy me a coffee as well. A massive thank you to everyone who does support the channel, because it is only with your guys' support am I able to keep making content like this. Anyway, let's get on with the video and let's take a closer look at the T3A and see what you actually get in the kit. Okay, so when you first get this kit, you get two boxes. You get the unit itself, which is the main base station, and then you get a box with all the accessories in, such as the power cables, the actual headstock and stuff like that. And we'll take a look at that in a second. So the main unit is the T3A. This is the smart soldering station, which features up to 200 watts power output. It can be upgraded, so the firmware can be upgraded via your PC. It has a whole host of features, such as the screen. You've got channels, you've got presets, and the ability to control the temperature on the knob as well. Now, this company, I think it's pronounced Axiun or Axiun, they have been really proactive on their firmware updates. I'm not sure what version of firmware my model has come with, and there has been a few comments that things have changed, not necessarily to the better on the latest firmware, with people having some problems, and we'll talk about that as we go through. And whilst it's nothing fundamental, they have changed the behavior of the way the temperature ramps up on it, and we'll discuss that a bit further on. When you look around the box, it shows you all of the other parameters on the back. So we have here the input voltage range, the output. So it is a 24 volt DC soldering station. It has the temperature range, is capable of 100 to 480 C, 200 watts output. It's got a size, and you've got all of the normal basic details there. Now, it is worth mentioning that what is nice, the box feels really high quality on this when you first get it. When you get some stuff from AliExpress or Banggood, sometimes the quality of the box it comes in is more like this here. But I do have to say, their retail packaging is very nice, and you know, the box is very high quality, so it does give you a bit of a feel of quality to the unit. So looking inside, we've got the manual for the unit itself, which has all the instructions, obviously in Chinese as well as in English as well, I'm going to assume. Yes, we got English at the back, which is good. And they walk through all of the features and menus too, so that's nice to see. And then inside, we've got the soldering station itself. Lifting it out, you've got the main unit, which consists of a nice solid aluminium housing. On the back, we've got our power input. We've got in port 1, out DC, in ground pin. So you've got ground in port 1. I'm guessing that's from the stand. because it does have a link that goes to the stand to allow it to communicate and know when the iron's been placed in it. It says DC 24 8 amp out, so there's a DC output jack there. We've got a power switch, and then there looks to be a vent, although I can't see a fan through the grills. Looking around the rest of it, moving around to the front, peeling that off, we've got a nice large screen, channel 1 and set buttons. They feel nice, no issues with them. Okay, our rotary potentiometer or our rotary encoder does move a little bit. It doesn't feel the greatest of quality. If you can see me wobbling it there. You can do it one-handed. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And then we've got our input for our iron. It feels quite high quality. If I'm honest, you've got the rubber feet on the bottom. It feels solid. And then we've got a USB-C on that side there for updating the firmware. In the rest of the box, this white one here, you will find all of the other accessories. So what I got with this kit is our power cable. Again, as always, they tend to have a US head on them. They have included a conversion adapter, which I will not be using. I will be cutting that off and putting a proper British plug on it because I want a fuse in there. These things tend to never have fuses. No, it doesn't, so we're not going to be using that. They have included 3 tips, which we've got conical, like a chisel tip on that one, and an even a bent conical from the looks of it. These aren't the ideal tips for me. I will be ordering some official JBC ones most likely to try on it. But there's some tips to get us up and running, so we'll be able to do some tests with that. And as I've said, these are the 245 style cartridges. There's a link cable, which I'm guessing is for our stand. We've got our head itself and our stand. So let's have a look at the head. Now this is the 245 style head. Popping him out. There we go. They've given us some foam covers to go on the handle. And you've got the headstock itself with the old, reminds me of the old CB connections. Let's undo that. Nice little Velcro strap holding that in place. Silicon, feels nice silicon wire, so it doesn't feel too restrictive. And then we've got the soldering iron head itself, which is, as I said, it's that 245 style, which is nice. And they've labeled this T245A AX, and that's their model number there. That is plastic, so that's not rubber. I know on some of the other soldering stations, they have a rubber bit there. That's actually plastic like the rest of it. But then we have this, which would go over the top. And then for our cartridge, we would then simply open it up. Take our cartridge. Now, obviously, this is cold, so that's why I'm handling it. And then the cartridge goes in and locks in like that. And then we have our soldering in place. And the real nice thing with these cartridge-style irons is the fact that you can swap them easily. And look, you're not going to use your hand whilst it's on. If you try to use a pair of pliers, you end up with an injury like that. For those who do watch the channel, I stabbed myself with a soldering iron through the fingernail. Not a pretty injury. But you can change them with the stand, and that's one of the reasons I went for the upgraded stand, because they do include this basic stand with the iron. However, there is a better stand available now, which is more like the stand from JBC. And that is available too. So this one is just like a basic metal stand made of cheap steel. It's just bent steel. You've got your earth input here for that lead, because the reason for that input is it will detect when you put the iron in the stand and then shut the temperature down into holding temp for safety, as well as energy saving as well. But the better stand allows you to store the tips in it. We'll take a look at that in a second. The idea is it's got this little notch here, so you can actually go in and remove the tip like that and then put your other tip on. But this stand, you can see the tip just drops down inside, which isn't ideal. And the nice thing is then, if you were to be able to pick up your other tip, you've got this section here, which once the tip's in like that, you can just push it in like that. But again, this stand doesn't offer all of the extra features, and I would highly recommend, if you are going to get one of these, is to get the better stand. Now, that stand is an extra. I think it was $20, $30. Let me just get that. That comes in this box here. But it is a higher quality stand. And you can see this is the one for the T3A. I don't think there's a model number on it. Nothing else in there. We don't need that. And this comes wrapped. And this is more like a copy of the JBC stand. So it has our soldering holder. We've got our tip cleaning area down the bottom here, which you can lift out, and you've got your sponge in there, your metal sponge. You've got your holder, and then you've got your tip, and then you've got an area up here to store your tips. And then this has got the integrated lead into it already, which goes into the back of the station. And again, the idea of this one is it holds the station nicely like that. But you've now got this area here where you can just do that and the tip doesn't fall away into it. And if you were storing more tips, so if I just get another one, you've got your tip stored like that. So again, you've got the ability to swap your tips quickly and easily. So for instance, if I wanted to swap my tip, I would simply be able to go down to there, release, go up to there, and then go into that and just make sure it's pushed all the way in, and then you're ready to go. And then if you want to change that tip back to the other one, you can do that, push that like that, and then push it in and ready to go. So it just makes using the iron a lot easier overall. And there are some other nice features, like you can adjust the angle of that head there as well. You've got your soldering tip cleaning area down there too. So for the money, you're getting quite a lot. Now, the next thing we need to do is check this for safety before I plug it in. So what I'm going to do is do some electrical tests on it first, which we'll do. And then I think we'll test it, get it up and running and check it works. And then I will do a bit of a tear down on the video at the end of the video just to show you it as well, just to see what the quality is like inside. But what we will do is just some earth checks to make sure that the earth is connected correctly, it's not shorted out. And I'll probably do an insulation resistance check on it too, just to make sure that there's no problems there. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is check this for electrical safety. So we're going to do earth continuity test first, and then I will do some insulation resistance checks, and I'll be happy to power it up. So we're going to check the unit itself, and we'll also check the supplied power cable too. So I've got me trusty EEV blog multimeter here with me. We're going to check earth continuity first of all. So we're going to go from the center pin to the earth point on the back for the stand, and you can see we've got 0.09 of an ohm, absolutely perfectly fine. We'll check from the earth pin to the screw on the back, looking good again, 0.27. The metal casing looks to be anodized aluminium. I'm not getting any continuity directly on the casing, but the fact we do have earth continuity on the screw tells us everything there is good. We'll then just do the same checks with the power cable, just so we can be sure that the supplied power cable is safe. So we'll go from there to there. Yeah, 0.2 of an ohm. Let me just get it on properly. Yeah, 0.3 of an ohm. That's fine. We've got earth continuity through their cable too. If we shift around to the front, we now know the cable's working, so I can leave that in place. There is continuity, but it's quite high, to say the least. You know, we've got 130 kilo ohm there. Okay. Not quite as low as I would have liked on that, but we'll not worry. I'm guessing that connector isn't fully earthed. We'll check then the pins. So there's a mega ohm on that one, mega ohm on that one, mega ohm on that one. Oh, we got an earth pin there. That's fine. So that pin is earthed, which is pin 4. And then that one's, what, 157 kilo ohm. So there is an earth in the front connector, but the outer of the earth doesn't seem to be particularly earthed. The outer doesn't seem to be particularly earthed well. So what we're going to do is plug the iron in, and we'll just do some checks on this too, just to see if the head is earthed, which I would expect it to be. So we're going to go on the back again. Nope, sorry, trying to hold that on with a bit of pressure. Yeah, so the headstock is directly earthed, as will be the tip. Yeah, so you can see what we're getting an ohm there. 1 ohm, 2 ohm, 3 ohm now. Oh, no, I got it down to 0.24. There we go. So the head, the earth stock is fine. So that's fine. From that point of view, I'm all happy. So just to do the insulation resistance checks, just to make sure there's nothing untoward, we're going to do it on live to earth, I think it is at the moment, over 2000 megaohm, and we're going to go on the other one just to make sure that's okay. And we're doing that at 500 volts. Yeah, absolutely fine. No problems at all. So the unit's nice and safe. So I'm going to plug it in now and we'll take a look at it in action. Okay, so I'm ready to fire this up. We have our soldering iron in the holder or the base station, and that is connected into the back, and it goes into input 1, and that's then what is going to give us our standby feature. So when we lift the iron out, it will begin to heat, and then when we put the iron in, it will begin to fire up. So what we're going to do is hit the power switch on the back, wait for it to boot up. You can see the display's kicked in. We currently have our main temperature showing on the front. So we've got 19 degrees, and that's the current temperature of the iron tip. From the looks of it, we've got a power meter on the side here. We've got our presets along the bottom. We've got the voltage, so 24 volts. Counter, on time. I think that there is firmware, having had a quick flick through the manual. And then we've got the unit temperature as well. And we can see that it's picked up. It's a T4A handle, which we've got there in the base. And it's currently got nothing else set. Now, we've got our control knob, which allows us to adjust the temperature. So you go down and up, and that's the manual temperature adjustment. We've got channel, and I think that jumps through the presets. And then we've got set, which should take us into the menu. And okay, it's in Chinese. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm going to need to change that into English. Let me just grab the manual one-handed a second and flick through. So let's get the manual up, and looking on there, it looks to be the second one down with a little picture of the world. That's the second option down. So if I scroll, okay, that's rather interesting. So clockwise goes up, and then anti-clockwise goes down. Okay, that's a little bit frustrating. I'd prefer it the other way. I think it's a center press. Yes, it is. And is it? It's not a turn to adjust. Is it? Okay, center press again. Just looking at the manuals, and they're saying, okay, so if that's the display, okay, is it that? Yes, it is. Okay, so we've changed the language we're in now. Okay, cool. And if we come out, oh, we can see now on the display, and that Chinese is now changed to dormancy. So if we lift the handle out, you can hear it beeped and it's beginning to heat. So we've got the kick in has gone all the way up to 100%, and you can see it's set to 380, but that went to about 450, and you can now see it's cooling down. The reason for that is the later firmware versions have actually changed the behavior of the iron, and it now overshoots in the heat up period and then drops back down to the preset temperature. So we can now see that it is back at 380 as it is set there. If I make an adjustment, 385, you can see it's gone 384, 90, and it's changing nice and easily. But again, if I put the handle back in the base, it will then go into its dormancy, its standby mode, and you can then see it's beginning to cool down. That has been one of the complaints of the later firmware versions, having read online that it does overshoot. This is similar to other stations from high-end manufacturers, and I think the idea of it is to give you that initial boost of temperature when you power the iron on, rather than actually it just go up to the temp. If we press this, that's the menu. So if I come back out of that one there then will allow us to select our different temps. So you can see I've set it 380. So again, if I lift it out, it will overshoot. So that's, oh, it 390, got up to 390, and then it's going now back down to that 350. Okay, and you can see just how fast that heats up there. So again, when you got it in the dormancy, you don't have to worry about it taking a long time to heat up. It is almost instant. If we just jump into the menus now and just try to go through, so the top menu option is calibrate. If I go into that, this is going to allow us to set the temperature that the device says and confirm that is correct with the iron. So if you did have a soldering iron temperature measurement tool, you'd be able to actually fully calibrate the iron to make sure it is 100% correct. My understanding is they are fairly good already. I'm not overly concerned myself. We've obviously got our language. Again, having to rotate anti-clockwise to go down. We've got our maximum temp. which is currently set to 500 degrees. I'm happy with that. I got no interest in changing that one. We've got our lock temp. Now, I believe this locks the temperature so you can't change it and you can only use presets. So if I just turn that on and come out, yeah, you can now see that it's locked. I can't change it, but what I can do is choose the presets, but I can't change what they are. So the idea of that is preventing you accidentally changing the temperature on it. So again, we're going to go back down and turn that off because I've got no interest in having that on. We've got our dormancy settings. So we've got our dormancy temperature. I believe it's currently set to off. So closed sleep temperature will basically be 0 power going into the iron. Whereas you can set the dormancy temperature to be a temp. So you could set it to 200 degrees, 100 degrees. So rather than it having to reheat from cold, you can have it reheat from a preset temperature. For me, I don't personally see the need to set dormancy to a temperature because it heats up so quickly. I've got no problems with that being on 0. You've got dormancy delay. So you can turn that on and off, and that's, again, how long do you want it to delay before heating up or cooling back down when you place the iron in. That can be quite handy, so it stops this constant on and off. When you are doing lots of soldering, you need to put the iron down for a second. Again, I'm not seeing the need to use that one myself. Dormancy show. This one, I think, just turns the display to change when you're in dormancy. So if we just turn that on, I believe... So at the moment, when you're in dormancy, it shows like that. If we just take it out and put it back in. There we go. You can now see you get this display up rather than it showing the temperature. And you can press set to go into that. Again, for me, I don't see a need for that one. So I'm going to turn that back off. You've got sleep time. So how long before the unit actually goes to sleep? Really nice feature, because whilst you have got the safety of the dormancy feature with the base, it is always good to have additional sleep options on a unit. So if you did leave it plugged in accidentally, it is going to give you the option of doing that. And then we've got a standby mode, which is set. You can turn on and off. Now, I'm guessing that is for the display. So if we change that to on, how do we change it? So we can set it to 0 minutes. Okay, interesting. Ah, there we go. So on 0 minutes, the display just goes off. And if I lift it out, I'm guessing the display comes back on. Yes, it does. Put it back in, dormancy, and it just turns the display off. Not the greatest idea, that option for me. Again, oh, okay, so you can't actually wake it up. Okay, so we'll have to do that when it's turned on. Aha, it hasn't gone off. That could potentially allow you to leave the iron on, but without knowing on the display. So personally, I would leave that one off. But what I would consider doing is setting yourself a sleep time. So I am going to turn that on, and I'm going to have that at 30 minutes. So just in case I did leave the iron on, it has the option to go to sleep. And what I will do, can we turn that right down, and we'll see what that actually does. We'll set it to 1 minute, and then what I'll do is come out. That's annoying. There we go. So that's now working properly. So I'm going to leave that a minute now, and let's see what it actually does when it goes to sleep. So the unit's just gone into sleep. It made a beep, and then it came up with sleeping on the top. Now, I think I understand this a bit better now. The idea is that you can set your dormancy settings to a temperature, so say 100 degrees. So rather than have the iron go right down to nothing, it can go into, say, 100, and then the sleep would allow you to set a preset time for that to then go back down to 0 again. So it's almost like a second stage of dormancy. You can have your dormancy at a temperature, and then sleep would then override that after a preset amount of time. For me, I'm just going to leave the dormancy on 0 because I don't really see the need to have it... Oh, that's standby. Wrong one. I don't really see the need to have dormancy at a temperature for what I use. So we're okay on that one. We're then going to scroll down. We've got the option to turn the sound on and off, I'm guessing. Well, hey, we've lost that. We've got temp levels. Okay, that's our preset. So this is where we would adjust the preset options. We've then got reset. And then system info, which shows us the model as well as the firmware version. So that is the basic overview of the settings and stuff. What I'm going to do now is get it set up on the bench properly, and then let's give it some use and see how it actually performs. So I've just got one of my own regulator PCBs that I've used, so I'm just going to do some tests on that. So the iron's just in the holder, so I've got that very thin conical tip on, and I've set it to 350 degrees, so it's just come on and overshot. So I think what we'll do is we'll just get it on and see how well it's able to get heat into the PCB. It's fine there. We'll get some onto this larger pad and see how that wets. That wets very nicely indeed. I'm not the biggest fan of conical tips, if I'm honest. I prefer chisel. But this is wetting very nicely across all of the pads. Bridge in there a little bit, but that's just me. It certainly doesn't feel it. Let's try it on one of these larger pads here. So just put a bit of heat in. That's wetting absolutely fine. I've currently got it set to 350 degrees. If I look at the display at this point, it's taking about 15% power to do that. Absolutely fine. Let's try it on one of these large pads. This is obviously, and these obviously have wires through as well. So these are it's gonna take some heat on this to wet that. And we'll see what it thinks it needs. At the moment, it doesn't really seem to be. There we go. It's beginning to take some power. This tip is really too small for this. See what it's able to do. Again, it still only seems to be wanting 10% power. The issue here is the tip really isn't able to get into the board. What I'll do is let me swap this over for that chisel tip. And this is a flatter chisel, or knife style tip, actually, this one. So what we'll do is we'll go on to this fresh one down here, back at 350. We'll get the angle right, and let's see now how that wets. There, that's taking the heat better this time. Bigger tip. Still says only about 7% power. As I'm moving around, it is wetting in. It certainly is able, as you can see, to wet that down. Again, still only using sort of 7 to 10% power. Let me just put a bit more heat on that. And let's go to 380 and just see if that behaves any better. Again, I think this is as much down to the tip. It's certainly not struggling on that at all. Coming back over to this side here. See what that wets down like. Making sure I'm able to get that heat in. You can now see that it's beginning to heat that pad up and move it around. Absolutely fine. So the final thing I'm going to do on this soldering station is just take a look at the build quality inside. I've taken out the 4 screws on the back already, and I've just withdrawn the back panel off. You can see we've got all the power input cables. Everything is covered nicely. All of the wires on the earth bolts are bolted down nicely too, so that's all okay. Everything actually looks really, really good. I don't have any complaints here at all. Flipping it up, we can see down inside that you've got the main PCB. It then has this earth wire heading off down into here. I'm going to undo this screw in a minute because that is what's actually holding the PCB in. If I grab the board will rock on its mountings, and that's sliding in and out of the aluminium mountings, but it can't come out because this earth strap is holding it here. I can see down inside there's wires that go down to the front. I'll try and have a look down there in a second. And then just looking under the PCB, sorry, I'm going to try and get the camera to focus on this. I can see that there is a cover under it. There's a decent gap between the PCB and the base. But everything looks decent first of all. So what we'll do is we'll just get this screw out and try and withdraw the board out, and hopefully there's enough cable length on the front PCB to allow me to do that, because I don't want to strip it down too far, but let's have a look. This is as far as I can get the board out. It looks like there is a connector further down that goes onto the front board. I don't want to take the front end off this because I intend to use it. I've got no reason to completely tear it down. From what I can see, the quality looks good on the PCB though. I don't see anything in here that's raising any concerns, but that's about as far as I can get it out, and I don't want to do a destructive teardown on this because I do intend to be using it. As I said, looking in, I can see some of the caps and everything. They're low ESRs. There's no concerns around them. The surface mount components look good. There is a transistor in there mounted on the heatsink. That all looks good as well. Sorry, let me just try and get the camera to play ball and focus. There we go. You can see that down there as well. We've got an NTC on the input on the back too, which is good to see. Flipping the board over, you can see this little cover that they've got on the back of the board. I would have preferred a bit more like a piece of plastic or something like that, more solid, but it is fine. What I initially just saw did raise some concerns as well. And if you just look on the board here, you can see sort of track marks this side and this side. And that is almost where it slides in and out on the board. And I did wonder, is that the mounts getting awfully close to these pins down here? But when you do look inside, that doesn't appear to be the case. Let me just move my hand and try to show you. The area that goes over the board is much lower than that. It's smaller than that, I should say, sorry. It is nowhere near that big. So it isn't that that overhang is getting close to the components. It certainly looks like there's a fair bit of space. What I did spot though, which was a bit of a concern initially, and wait for the camera to focus, was this track, because this track basically runs underneath the aluminium chassis clamp that's holding the board. But when you pull back this, it reveals that it actually goes to here, and that is the earth, so that is fine. Even if that wore through, it's only going to be touching the earth, so it's not something I'm particularly concerned about. But it is just worth noting how that looks when it goes in. But if I drop the PCB back in, try to have the board back, yes, there's a bit of movement there, but it doesn't look like it's particularly close to any of the components looking down in there overall. So from a build quality point of view, I'm fairly happy. What we're going to do is get it back together, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so it's a few weeks later, and I've had enough time now to put this station through its paces. I've been doing quad building, laptop repair, and all of the usual stuff I do on a daily basis, and I've been using this for all of them. And it's given me enough time to build up a good opinion on the product. Now, I have to say, I really, really like this Axium soldering station. In fact, I only have 3 minor complaints about it. The quality of the main unit is very good, and I'm happy with the build inside. It looks electrically safe. I've got no complaints with the way they've designed it. And whilst I would have liked to have seen a bit more of a plastic cover under the main PCB, the overall build looks very, very good. In use, it's got more functionality than I will personally ever need. And whether you're a pro or a hobby user, it should have every eventuality covered. I do like the T245 head that they ship with it as well, and whilst that section there, as I mentioned, isn't rubber, at no point have I found it getting too hot to hold, but if it was, they do include these little covers with them as well if you did want to A, increase the thickness, or just have some additional insulation there, but I've not found it necessary personally. In use, it has handled everything that I have thrown at it, and there's no point where I found it lacking in the amount of power it's able to deliver, and the real lack has been around the tip size more than anything else. If you are going to get one though, I do recommend you get it with this proper stand and not use the cheap one that they include with it, because that is a bit weak overall, and this just offers a lot more extra functionality. The tips they supply in the pack are okay, but you are going to want to swap them out for some good ones over time. This little chisel style one is the one I've been using the most. I'm not a big fan of conicals that they've supplied, but they are handy if you are doing surface mount component repair. Overall, I literally, as I've said, got zero complaints with the main unit itself. My complaints really are more on the form factor side of things. So for instance, I do wish it was designed that it pointed the screen up. So rather than have it this small flat box, I prefer it so it would be up on an angle like that. The way they've got the cable on the back, it could do with a 90-degree connector, which would allow you to actually prop it up without it resting on it. What I'm going to end up doing is 3D printing a mount for it to try and hold it on that angle rather than having it flat. Also, the potentiometer feels a little bit weak. It does rub unless you pull it out a little bit, and it does feel at times as an area that could end up giving you problems in the future. But here and now, for me, it works absolutely fine, although the fact that it is reversed seems a bit strange at times. My only other complaint is around firmware updating, and that is, just be warned, if you download the software and plug this in, it will automatically upgrade the firmware. It does not ask you if you want to upgrade the firmware. It's simply, when you click connect, connects to the device, and then boom, will install the latest firmware. I now have the firmware that does have that overshoot installed, and whilst it is a bit annoying to see the display go up and back down, it's not something I'm particularly concerned about, but I do know it is something some people don't like, but it is common with some of the other more expensive stations on the market. But it is a bit annoying that you might plug it in to see what the firmware available is, and then suddenly, boom, it's done it before you know it, and you've got the latest, regardless if you want it or not. And as far as I'm aware, there's no way to downgrade that at the moment. Overall, this is a very, very good piece of kit, and if you're looking to get yourself a fully featured soldering station for the bench, there is no reason not to check this out. I think this total kit was like $135, something like that. It's an absolute bargain, and if you're looking to get a fully featured station, it is certainly well worth a look. That's it from me. I hope you have found this video interesting. Please do let me know what you think about this in the description as well. As I said, I bought it with my own money, so there are no affiliate links in the description either. Although if you do want to support the channel, there are links to my Patreon as well as buy me a coffee there too. And again, if you are using this, please do give me your experience, because for me, it's been absolutely fantastic.